Assalamoalaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Farina Siddiqui from MCMN welcomes you again. And today we are talking about a very important topic with a very dedicated, very competent professional. And the topic is safety. Why do we need safety? When we talk about Muslim Canadian issues, we talk about Islamophobia, we talk about racism, we talk about discrimination. We need to prepare our people. We need to prepare the mindset of our people, and we need to actually change the understanding and the focus of our people when it comes to safety. Do we actually pay more attention to that? No, I guess. So this is exactly why we have invited Brother Younus Imam to our talk today, and he's an emergency management professional who has been helping a lot of organizations, who has been helping a lot of leaders, and he is providing so much information and training to our community. And fi sabilillah, he has also created a beautiful tip sheet that MCMN will be posting in a few days, inshallah. And I would like to welcome Younus to our show. Assalamu alaikum, Younus.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm very honored to be on. Jazakallah khair. Thank you.
Please introduce yourself. What do you do and why do you do that?
Yeah, in school I studied emergency management, and while I was in school, the Quebec City shooting happened, and I decided that I wanted to do something about it because it was scary, right? And it was just to simply I just wanted to help the community a bit, and my professor basically decided to. He heavily encouraged me. You need to do formal research on this that you can publish. So we embarked on a 1-year journey, and we published a final research thesis on preparing masajids for security around the GTA specifically.
Mm-hmm. So are our masajid under a threat, do you think?
Well, we don't know, right? Because at the time, right, Donald Trump had only recently been elected, right? And he had been spewing a lot of hatred and misinformation about Muslims, right? Saying that we're accused of a lot of things. Obviously, we're still in the recovery stage from 9/11, right? Where that sort of narrative has taken hold, and obviously, as NCCM recently provided a report, even it extends to things like the Canada Revenue Agency profiling Muslim charities and making it very difficult for them to operate without fear of, oh no, what's gonna happen? Are we gonna be branded as a terrorist organization because we do one thing wrong, right? So
yeah.
We see that there's a lot of these kind of patterns, and obviously the Quebec City shooting is actually the worst hate crime against Muslim, in terms of death toll. It's the worst hate crime against Muslims in North America, right? Not even in America has something like this happened.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And that's so unfortunate. May Allah be pleased with the souls of those martyrs. And it literally shook the entire country, let alone Muslims. It shook the entire country that something of this kind of, this magnitude can happen in Canada. And we always thought, these kind of threats, these kind of dangers or terrorist activities against Muslims can only happen in different other parts of the world. And Canada would be the last country we would imagine something like this to happen into, right? So that shook us all, and we are still shaken. And I truly understand why professionals like you, who are spreading so much knowledge about this, is very important. So we talk about masjid safety at one end, and then what about the personal safety? We have seen incidents our recent attempt to the brother who was killed, who was martyred outside of the Toronto masjid, right? And then we see other incidents when stabbing and snatching of hijabs and all that happen. What would you say about those things, and how should we handle those?
So generally, our team at the SALAM Project, we try to provide as much information as possible in terms of how to prevent that. Generally speaking, when you're looking at something like that, there's usually a lot of things that one can do to make themselves safer. So the number one thing is just awareness, right? Are you mindful of your surroundings? So generally speaking, most people are not taking note of what's going on around them, right? They aren't they aren't scanning oh yeah, who's approaching, and what are they doing, or what are their intentions, right? In my professional life, we've had one woman who she was actually stalked 3 or 4 times by the same car at different times, and they were just watching her each time, right? And so she did the right thing. She reported it to the police and reported to us, and we were able to get solutions out there to help her, right? In terms of, what she should do to protect herself, right? Example with the IMO stabbing, right? With Mohammed Aslim Zafis, right?
Yeah.
That was in an area. So first of all, he was alone, right? That was the number one thing. It's very important to make sure that you are, if you're in a dangerous area and you fear that something's going to happen to you, you need to make sure that there's somebody with you, because criminals are generally cowards. They're not going to try to, if it's a sexual assault or like just a murder like that, they're not gonna do it if you have company with you, right? Because they don't want to be caught, because they realize that you're no longer an easy target, right? So there's a couple things you can do. So for example, at nighttime, you want to stay in places of light where lots of people can see you, right? A criminal is not going to try to attack you when lots of people are seeing you, right? With regards to like this Edmonton Mall issues, right? We don't have too many details on that, but I'm assuming that there may have been, somebody approaching approaching the sisters, right? And in that case, like what you need to do is, okay, how many escape routes do you have? Look around you, right? In your masjid, let's say you're doing Fajr namaz in your masjid, right? Do you know how many emergency exits are just for your own masjid? Right? So take a look at that. Stay aware so that you can escape, to safety. Don't be afraid to make noise, and make sure that whatever happens, you report it to police right away if you do not feel safe, and report it to everybody around you as well. Tell everybody around you. In our Muslim community, unfortunately, we have a lot of this kind of cultural stigma where you need to hide some stuff. You don't report anything, right?
Yeah.
But it's important. So I'll use the example of the Jewish community. Since World War II, the Jewish community has been very, very upfront. They've reported every single thing to the police right away, without fail, if there's hate crime going against them. Because of that, the police has actually been able to establish more funding to take care of hate crime against Jewish people. And they have successfully combated a lot of that and engaged in education programs.
Yeah.
And they've put money towards actually targeting the specific people who are the instigators of that.
And that's a very important point. Like, even with different kind of hate crimes, even non-police reported hate crimes, we were able to establish laws, anti-Semitism laws and all that in place, and which is amazing. And I think Muslims should wake up and start reporting these kind of incidents to the right people. And I'm really happy that NCCM is actually taking the lead role in helping Muslims report those kind of crimes. Like, for instance, I see a lot of young sisters who go to universities, who go to night schools and all that. They get slurs, they get those kind of incidents happen to them day in and day out, but they don't report. Why? Because parents don't have the knowledge and awareness that it should be reported. They think, we will spread more hatred, we will spread more division if we report like that, or people will yell Islamophobia even more. They will not like Muslims even more because we are complainers and all that, and they shush their children. And they say, what, don't worry about it. Or maybe you just thought like that. Maybe you didn't understand the guy really well, and things like that. I have hear and seen things. And in a grocery store, just before Ramadan, in a grocery store, a sister was buying strawberries, and there was an older lady, and she came to her, and she said, I know who you people are. You are haters, and I hate you. And she was like, really? And her husband said, don't worry about it. Don't say anything. Don't talk back. And they just left the grocery store, leaving their groceries like that. And I said, you have to report. I sent them the form the NCCM has and all that. But they said, no, we don't want to create any problems. So this is the kind of attitude that our community has. And this is why police has this lack of information, or they don't understand the intensity of these issues. These issues happen. These hate crimes, hate slurs and all that happen. But because they're not reported, we don't have any data, we don't have any documented evidence to actually help the lawmakers understand that this is happening. So what would you say to, like, to especially to sisters, because they are the most visible Muslims, right? Unlike other gender population of Muslims. So what would you say to them?
So I think every single thing we've talked about, it goes doubly. Like, I'm not even against like confronting Islamophobia out in the open, but I know that that's not something that everybody can or should do. It's not always appropriate.
Mhm.
So obviously, beyond reporting it, right, you want to talk about what can you do in the moment.
Hmm.
So beyond looking at escape routes, making sure that you have somebody with you, being in a place of good lighting and good visibility where there's going to be lots of other people around you, right? I think it's also important to, it might be like, a sexual assault or a physical assault of some kind, like obviously the whole hijab, issue in Edmonton, right? It's important to understand, um, like in the moment you might want to raise the, you might want to yell out and stuff like that. You might want to scream, and that's a great idea to do that, because then other people will like pay attention to that, right?
Mhm.
um, we have we have different incidences where somebody's being attacked or whatever, and because they don't talk about it, guess what, nobody's out there to help them, because there may be one person in the crowd and that's the only person, but that person will come and help you, right? So that's one thing as well. Don't be afraid to, you want to think about decision making. uh, Police here have a system called run, hide, defend, and that's a methodology that you use to uh, think about what are your options during an emergency. So the first being, okay, run away to safety, right? Then hide somewhere. If you can't run away, hide somewhere, right? And if you don't have a choice, if somebody's actually attacking you and your life is in danger, fight back, defend yourself, right? And
Mhm.
and understand that you might think, oh yeah, because you're a woman, you're smaller, you're not as physically strong, right? But we've seen multiple examples of women fighting back and actually succeeding, right? Because what happens is that as soon as somebody even has some sort of small inkling of like, oh my god, this person might actually hurt me, a lot of these bullies and cowards, they'll run away. They
Mhm.
even though they're twice as big. So I've seen in my own eyes instances where there was like a group of armed robbers, very large, big dudes, right, with weapons, and they attacked a business, and the security guard in front of that business, she held the door closed and she just kept it closed. They smashed through the windows, but then they realized, oh my god, there's somebody who's willing to fight back against that, and
Mhm.
they ran away.
Mhm.
Right? We have an example. Multiple mosque shootings now have been stopped by people who were like much older than the shooter, right? And they just stopped him. In one Norway, this guy tackled him to the ground. He was 65 years old,
Yeah.
and yet the guy was 20 years old. And probably one of my favorite examples is that in San Francisco,
Yeah.
an Asian lady was attacked by a 30-year-old man, and she beat him up. Right? And this guy is twice the size of her, and like maybe half or one third of the age, and he had to be sent to hospital. The paramedics were there for him, right? So imagine that many of these people who are attacking, right? They're
Of
doing so
course.
out of a
Yeah.
sense of fear. So when we look at the profile of an active shooter, for example, you'll find that a lot of these men are generally uh, they're part of a group called incels, right?
Okay.
And they're a serious enough threat that the RCMP has done a threat assessment that has been released to the security industries now within Canada. So incels generally are people who they're young males who are kind of alone on their own, and they don't have a lot of social backing. And what they do is that they go online and they start going in these groups, right? There'll be these anti-female groups, right? They'll be in all sorts of groups that they're basically hating the other, right? A lot of the times it's blaming, like, okay, because I'm not successful in life, it's somebody's fault, right? Because women aren't going to pay me attention, it's all women's fault because they're only choosing somebody because they have certain features, right? Which is obviously not true. It's complete nonsense, right? They've created a situation for themselves. But what they do is that they things like Muslims, people of color, people of different races, right? They start blaming those people, right? And they want to take action. So, for example, the person who did the Danforth shooting and the Toronto van attack, those people, they fit into the incel category. And they're actually doing it from a sense of shame because they feel that they have no control over their own lives. They're decided that they want to attack and they want to get attention to themselves. The New Zealand shooter, for example, streamed the whole shooting on Facebook. He streamed it live on Facebook, and then on his gun, he had, among other things, he had the name of the Quebec City shooter written on his gun. So he was doing it in tribute to that person. Right? So these people are all, unfortunately, they're all closely interlinked. Right? They are all taking inspiration from one another.
What kind of tips do you want to give to common Muslim other than reporting?
When you're doing the reporting itself, noting down details. So noting down what the person said, noting down exactly what actions they were taking, and clothing, their shoes. So criminals, so I've seen this multiple times now. Criminals don't change their shoes, right? So like one of my colleagues, he was actually loss prevention for Costco. He's security for Costco. And what happens is that he noticed somebody, stealing. Like he suspected somebody of stealing on the property, and he had some very weird shoes, and you just remember those shoes. Now, when this person came back to Costco, like he couldn't prove it, but when this person came back to Costco, he saw that the person was wearing the same shoes, right? And he was getting caught up in another suspicious incident. So then they were able to say that, hey, this is the same guy as before. And he was wearing the same shoes, and then they managed to catch him, right? So details like that, it's very important to report all the details that you've got, like distinguishing body features, like do they have tattoos, do they have different hairstyles, color of hair, different types of clothing, what they were wearing, right? And it's very important to note specific quotations of what they're doing. If they said something like on the order of like stuff regarding violence, right, or stuff regarding Islamophobia, that's stuff that you need to note down, right? So that's another thing regarding safety. When it comes to self-defense, what I'll say is that just fighting back and having the courage to stand back if you're being attacked, that is usually enough that many criminals are just not going to, they're like, okay, it's not worth the effort. They'll be scared all of a sudden, right? So don't be afraid, if somebody's attacking you, right, don't try to be helpless or just give in, right? Be ready to fight back, because it's different if somebody's trying to steal from you, right? If somebody's trying to steal from you, okay, whatever, let them have the money, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? But if somebody's trying to if somebody's actually trying to hurt you and stuff, it's different, right? You know that there's no other choice at this point. You might end up dead, right? So don't be afraid to fight back. My biggest recommendation is also be mindful of your surroundings. So let's say that you're walking down a dark area at night, right, and you see somebody trailing you all of a sudden, right? It might be nobody, but it might be something, right? So in order to feel safe, there's a lot of things you can do. Move to an area with good lighting. So, and maybe even cameras. If another business has cameras, maybe close to a business that has some cameras, right? Maybe close to where other people are, right? So if something does happen, now you have multiple lines of surveillance, multiple pieces of evidence. You have eyewitness accounts, you have cameras, right? And then obviously you have lighting, so you know that it's a place where some attention is there, right? That's one thing, right? And obviously learn know that, okay, do a quick survey. Okay, if this person attacks me, I can run this way or I can run that way, right? There's doors here, there's doors there, right? And come up with a small plan, right? If you plan, what happens, that builds a lot of confidence in yourself. If you plan, okay, I'm going to move here so that the person has difficulty getting away with it, right? And if I have this and this escape route, all of a sudden now you have the confidence that, okay, if he's going to make an action, I'm going to do a reaction.
If somebody enters a house, what does the law say? How can we protect and fight back or defend ourselves?
So regarding the Canadian law, there is a thing called a Good Samaritan Act. Good Samaritan Acts are actually active in most countries, and they're different depending on different countries. What it is that if somebody is in danger, and that includes yourself, you are allowed to take any action necessary to stop that danger, and the law is going to protect you.
Okay.
If you see somebody hurting somebody else, right, and you go in there and you intervene, or if that person's, like, say, having a medical issue, right, and you go and you try to help that person because they're about to die, the law is not going to punish you, even if you screw up or whatever, because the law, the police, the judge, the courts, they know that every single other person ignored it, and you went there and you tried to protect somebody. You tried to make a difference at the time when the person needed it the most, right? And that includes for yourself, right? So you're allowed to take any action that you are you can conceivably take to prevent that harm from happening. Obviously, you're not allowed to go further. If you stop the guy, don't start torturing him and killing him, right?
Exactly.
You're not allowed to do that, right? But yeah, and within your own home, it's actually even more, because it's your own property, right? That's even more applicable there, right? It's even, like, less likely. Within a mosque, they may be okay, it's a public space, that sort of thing, right? But even then, you'll still be protected. So don't ever fear the law in that sense.
Just as we close, would you like to give a message to the parents who actually discourage their young kids, especially our youth, when they want to, when they get upset with these kind of incidences, or even the slurs, or uncomfortable incidences? Parents are the ones who take the lead in making those decisions for their young kids, even kids 18 plus. They listen to their parents because we have those cultural and religious values, right? And they tell these kids not to tell anybody, don't worry about it, ignore it. So what would you say to these parents as a closing message?
I think one of the things is, obviously, after 9/11, that we had so many incidences of Muslims getting unfairly treated by law enforcement, right? I know a story of in South Carolina, right? We had one Muslim who was sending money back home to his family in Palestine, and then they said, then the FBI came and said, no, you're sending it to Hamas, right? And then without any proof, they locked him up for a while, right? And then they only let him go because he would wear a microphone to spy on other Muslim communities, right, on the masjid, right? But he refused, and then they just basically kept him in for another 5-10 years. I don't know, right? We have lots of stories like that.
Lots of stories,
it makes sense that as parent would have that kind of attitude towards Islamophobia, because they're afraid, oh yeah, that same sort of treatment is going to happen because we're Muslim. It's going to be it's going to be taken that way. I feel that that's one of the issues, right? What I will say to that is that the situation has changed now. We've obviously groups like NCCM and CARE, the Council of American Islamic Relations, they've done so much work, and obviously the Muslim community as a whole, to dispel Islamophobia, right? The situation is much different now, and what I'll say is, actually, you're doing a disservice to your children if you tell them not to report it and just to ignore the issue, because what's happening, it's not just about your kid, right? It's not just your kid. We need to think bigger, right? Because the more you report it, the more it's going to be helping other kids and protecting other kids, because it may be that something bad happened to your kid, right? As simple as an Islamophobic comment, or as big as an assault, right? But guess what? You're protecting the Muslim children in the future who are going to go through this, right? Because guess what? Now all of a sudden there'll be more support, more funding, right, behind that, right? Obviously, we look at, I use the example of the Jewish community. The Asian community is very forefront on reporting crimes and hate crimes. You'll see it any time there's even a slight inkling, right? The Chinese population will be very, very quick to, get behind each other's back. They'll have each other's backs, and they'll report that stuff. My own mother, right? A couple of years ago, she was driving and somebody yelled at her from the car, ISIS. Right? My mom wears hijab as well, right? And my mom didn't report it. She's at the forefront of all these things, but she herself didn't report it to the police, right? And these are things that we need to remember that, you know, we need to remember what, like, you know, there's lots of actions we can take. We don't need to, can't just ignore it because, you know, if you're having a medical issue, right, and you kept ignoring it, you know, you keep ignoring it, right? Oh yeah, it's not that big of a deal. Oh, all of a sudden I have COVID, right? And then all of a sudden because I, like, you know, I didn't take care and didn't isolate, right? And I've spread it to like 20 other people, right? That's happened. That's happened in my own family circle, right? Where people didn't take care multiple times, right? Now, all of a sudden, it's not just affecting you, it's affecting about 20, 30 other people. In the same way, we need to look at Islamophobia the same way, that if we don't deal with it now, it's going to hurt us later. And obviously, you know, there's only so much we can do over time. But I'm confident that, you know, we are going to make things better. And even if we help just one person, we're going to make a positive difference.
Lakar, Younus, and I hope with your conversation and the tips we have learned something, and we will inshallah keep talking about these things. These conversations should happen, and these conversations should expand. And people in our community are blessed that we have young professionals like you who are ready to provide that training, who are ready to answer those questions, and who are always there to actually help raise more awareness.
And thank you for all the work that you and a lot of other Muslim social media people are doing. You know, you guys are kind of keeping the community together. I think during COVID, it's so important. Like, we don't have the masjids anymore. Like, you know, they really aren't. They like, you know, and so you guys are kind of the masters of the social media realm, and you guys have stepped up. So alhamdulillah. Thank you.
Jazakallah khair. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.